Have you ever felt that strange, creeping sense like something was off, but you just couldn't explain what it was? As if the decisions you made weren't entirely yours. As if something or someone was pulling invisible strings behind your back. Maybe you've said yes when you wanted to say no, stayed silent when you knew you were right, or trusted someone who later revealed a completely different face. If that sounds familiar, and for most people, it is, then this video is for you, because the uncomfortable truth is this: you are being manipulated every single day. By friends, by family, by the media, by authority figures, by anyone who understands the secret mechanisms of the human mind. And the most dangerous part, you probably don't even realize it. They don't need to hypnotize you. There's no flashing light or eerie music. The most effective manipulation doesn't look like manipulation at all. It makes you feel like the choice was yours, like the mistake was your fault. And that's what keeps you stuck. Most people go through life like pawns on a chessboard, moved around by others without even knowing they're part of a game. And when they finally sense something is wrong, when they try to resist, they're met with guilt, shame, fear, and self-doubt. Because they've been emotionally trained not to fight back. Still think this doesn't apply to you? Be careful. That's exactly what a skilled manipulator wants you to believe. This video is not here to comfort you. It's here to wake you up. Because the ones who truly master manipulation, just as Machiavelli described, don't need to shout, threaten, or demand. They watch, they listen, they analyze. They understand your insecurities, your hopes, your patterns, and they use them. They know what drives you. And if you don't, you will always be driven. Today, we're going to expose the blueprint. You'll begin to see how manipulation operates quietly in everyday conversations. You'll recognize the patterns, the emotional traps, the subtle pressures, and more importantly, you'll start to see your own blind spots, the vulnerabilities you didn't know were being used against you. Because real freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want, it comes from knowing why you want it. This is a message for those who've been silenced, blamed, conditioned into compliance. This is for those who've had enough of being played. It's time to stop being a pawn and start thinking like a strategist. But I must warn you, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you know the game, you can never go back to playing blind. So take a deep breath, because what you're about to uncover may permanently change the way you see other people and, even more importantly, how you see yourself. Let's begin with a simple but powerful question. Why do some people always seem to get what they want without ever pushing, begging, or even raising their voice? Stay tuned. The next part will show you exactly how they do it. Even before a single word is spoken, manipulation is already at play. That's the terrifying part. It begins in silence, through the way they read your body language, your expressions, the hesitation in your voice, or the pause between your words. Some manipulators use charm as their weapon. They smile just the right way, offer compliments that feel personal, make you feel like you're finally being seen, heard, and appreciated. You think they're different from everyone else, but behind that warmth, there's calculation. They're not just being kind, they're building something, a quiet emotional debt. And when someone gives so much without asking for anything in return, what do you feel? The urge to reciprocate. That's when it begins. You start to give in small at first, then more. You say yes when you want to say no. You agree to things that don't sit right with you. Why? Because they made you feel like you owe them. Others skip the charm and go straight for guilt. They act overwhelmed, fragile, misunderstood. They make you feel like you're the only person who gets them. Suddenly, you're not just a friend or a partner, you're responsible for their emotional well-being. And if you try to say no, they don't argue. They sigh. They glance down. They say things like, "I guess I was wrong to think I mattered." That single glance, that one passive-aggressive sentence, it's enough to hook you. Then there are those who play with fear. They paint catastrophic futures. If you leave me, you'll regret it. If you say no, you'll be alone forever. These people don't need chains to hold youth. They bind you with ideas. Doubt creeps in. You start questioning your own instincts. And just like that, you remain stuck, not because you can't leave, but because you've convinced yourself not to. This isn't new. Niccolo Machiavelli, in The Prince, described manipulation not just as a tactic, but as a calculated instrument of power. With surgical precision, he explained how people are driven by emotion far more than logic, and that anyone who understands this dynamic holds immense control. As he wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, because all can see, but few can touch." And that's exactly what manipulation is, a show. A perfectly crafted emotional performance. The manipulator builds a stage, writes the script, casts the roles, and without realizing it, you step into character. The most haunting part. You believe the story was yours all along. But why does it work? Because there's something inside you that lets it. A hidden vulnerability, an unhealed wound, a need you haven't yet recognized. And that's where we go next, into the emotional blind spots that leave you open to control. Because until you face what weakens you, you'll keep mistaking manipulation for love, loyalty, or even respect. Let's uncover those vulnerabilities starting now. Have you ever noticed how certain people always seem to get what they want even when they don't deserve it? They don't shout, threaten, or beg. Instead, they persuade, they engage, they plant ideas so subtly that you end up believing those ideas were your own. That's not charisma. That's manipulation in its most precise and dangerous form. The skilled manipulator doesn't act on impulse. They're calculated. They watch how you react, what makes you anxious, what kind of approval you seek. They study your insecurities, your silent fears, your emotional gaps. And once they identify what drives you, they don't push you walk right into their hands willingly. Maybe they tell you you're special. Maybe they praise you when you crave validation the most. Or maybe they simply mirror what you want to hear. Whatever the tactic, the result is the same. You feel seen, understood, appreciated, and that feeling, it's addictive, but there's a hidden cost. Without realizing it, you begin to adjust yourself to stay in their favor. You say yes when you want to say no. You second-guess your instincts. You stay silent when you should speak. All because, deep down, you fear losing their approval, or even worse, being made to feel guilty. That's how they trap you. Not with chains, but with invisible strings pulled by emotional leverage. Others use a different method, guilt. They make themselves look fragile, misunderstood, even broken. They don't ask directly, they let their sadness speak for them. You feel bad for not helping. You feel cold if you say no. And slowly, you become their emotional caretaker. You begin to sacrifice your peace so they won't feel hurt. Not out of love, but out of emotional blackmail. And when you finally try to step back, they play the victim. I guess I just expected too much. Maybe I'm just a burden. You've been manipulated and You don't even realize it. Then there are those who manipulate through fear. They don't need to raise their voices. They just know how to trigger the anxieties you already carry. If you walk away, you'll regret it. You'll end up alone. These aren't threats, they're suggestions. Whispers that sink deep into your subconscious. They make you doubt your ability to choose for yourself. And so, you stay. Not because you want to, but because you've been convinced that leaving means disaster. The truth is, manipulation works best, not because others are strong, but because we have blind spots. Emotional wounds, unhealed fears, deep cravings for love, acceptance, and belonging. That's what they target. And unless you become aware of them, you'll keep falling into the same traps, thinking each time that you're in control when you're not. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that true power lies not in force, but in understanding what others want and using that knowledge to quietly guide their behavior. That's what manipulators do. They don't control your actions. They shape your emotions so that you willingly give up your power. So now the question is, what makes you vulnerable? What part of you is still waiting to be seen, loved, accepted? Because unless you confront that truth, you'll keep mistaking manipulation for connection and control for love. In the next section, we'll go straight into that emotional core. We'll uncover the patterns that keep you stuck, the weaknesses that get exploited, and most importantly, how to build real emotional immunity so that no one can use your own mind against you again. It's time to stop being the puppet and start becoming the strategist. If you've come this far, you now understand that the first step in escaping manipulation is awareness, knowing what invisible string gets pulled when you surrender. Now, let's take it further. Ask yourself honestly, what makes you give in? Is it the fear of disappointing someone? The anxiety of being rejected? The urge to keep the peace at any cost, even when it comes at the expense of your own well-being? Once you identify the emotional lever that others use to move you, you start changing the rules of the game. The second step is what Machiavelli would call strategic detachment. It's the ability to stay emotionally grounded while still staying present. You don't become cold or disconnected, but you do stop reacting blindly. It means you learn to observe without immediately engaging. When someone flatters you, you don't let it go straight to your ego. When someone pulls at your sympathy, you don't instantly step in. You pause, you think. Because the manipulator doesn't want you to think. They want you to feel fast, hard, and without reflection. They need your emotional urgency. They rely on your autopilot. So your power lies in breaking that loop. Slow down, reflect. Reclaim the space between stimulus and response. The third step is to become unpredictable. Manipulators love patterns. They study your reactions like a chess player reads an opponent's next 5 moves. They know that if they cry, you'll comfort them. If they flatter you, you'll relax. If they pressure you, you'll cave. So the best way to break their grip is to disrupt the script. Be unexpected. Say no when they expect a yes. Walk away when they assume you'll stay. Stay silent when they bait you into an argument. This unpredictability destabilizes their control. It removes their advantage. And when they lose predictability, they begin to reveal their true intentions. Another crucial foundation is developing a strong internal identity. The more rooted you are in who you are, the less you'll crave external approval. And when you don't need to prove anything, you become far harder to manipulate. Manipulators thrive on controlling the way you see yourself. They inject doubt. They chip away at your self-image. until you begin to rely on their version of you. But once your inner vision is clear and strong, that spell breaks. External control weakens. But don't be deceived, this is a practice, not a one-time revelation. Emotional immunity doesn't come from watching a video. It comes from consistent, uncomfortable, but essential work. Self-observation, resisting the urge to please, holding your ground even when people frown, guilt trip, or withdraw their affection. You owe the world many things, but your mental clarity, your self-respect, your peace of mind, those are non-negotiable. In a world where emotional games are the default language, protecting your inner balance is an act of rebellion. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men must either be pampered or eliminated. If you only offend them, they will seek revenge." Harsh, yes, but it reflects a deeper truth when it comes to power and emotional control. Neutrality often doesn't exist. Either you learn to hold your emotional ground, or someone else will occupy it for you. But what happens when the manipulator isn't a stranger? What if they're in your home, in your office, in your bed? What if the person trying to control you is someone you love? How do you protect your soul when cutting ties isn't so easy? In the next part, we'll enter the most difficult terrain of our manipulation in close relationships. And what you'll find there may be the toughest test of emotional strength you've ever faced. Are you ready for that? Let's go deeper. After everything we've uncovered so far, one truth becomes clear. The hardest manipulation to escape is the one that wears the mask of love. It's easy to talk about control when it comes from strangers, from the outside. But what happens when the manipulator is someone you deeply care about? A father, a mother, a romantic partner, a friend you've known since childhood, or a boss who once gave you a shot when no one else did. That's when things get truly complicated. Because the manipulation no longer feels like a threat, it feels like affection. It hides behind gestures of care, behind words that sound like love, but tastes like guilt. And because you don't want to lose the bond, you stay. You endure, you make excuses. You convince yourself that this is just how love works. But real love doesn't distort your reality. The manipulator who's close to you doesn't need to raise their voice. They only need to raise an eyebrow. They don't say, "You can't do that," they say, "I just thought you'd understand." They don't forbid, they suggest, imply, plant seeds of guilt. And slowly, you stop questioning. You begin censoring your own thoughts. You walk on emotional eggshells. You anticipate their reactions before speaking, and you tell yourself it's just to keep the peace. But what kind of peace costs your identity? This is how emotional manipulation works within intimate relationships. In love, it might sound like devotion. "I only act this way because I love you." Or, "Without you, my life is meaningless." But love that requires submission is not love. That's emotional blackmail dressed as romance. In the family, manipulation wears the face of tradition. You can't treat your mother like this. You owe it to your parents. But respect that's born out of guilt isn't real respect. It's a form of quiet control. In the workplace, it often disguises itself as loyalty. You should be grateful. Who else would give you this opportunity? But gratitude, used as leverage, is no longer gratitude, it's manipulation, masquerading as appreciation. Here lies the central truth, one that takes courage to accept. Just because someone loves you doesn't mean they know how to love you in a healthy way. Not all affection is liberating. Not every connection is meant to be kept. Some are simply there to keep you small, afraid, compliant. So what do you do when you wake up and realize you're trapped? You begin by setting boundaries. Clear, calm, firm boundaries. Boundaries that don't require explanation or apology. A quiet but confident no has more power than endless justifications. Then you speak your truth, not to argue, not to persuade, but to declare to yourself, this is who I am, and this is what I will no longer allow. And then you prepare, because the backlash will come. It may come as tears, accusations, silence, or guilt trips. Manipulators don't give up control easily. They test you. They hope you'll fold. But standing firm, even in the face of their reaction, is your turning point. And here's a truth that many avoid because it's painful to admit. Sometimes, loving someone means stepping away. Sometimes, saving yourself means walking out of a relationship that is slowly suffocating your soul. But how do you know when it's time to go? That's what we'll uncover in the next part, how to recognize the line between growth and destruction, and how to protect your peace without betraying your heart. Let's take that next step together. You now understand that breaking free from toxic emotional entanglements requires more than courage. It requires vision, a new kind of perception that pierces through appearances, that stops believing in words and starts paying attention to patterns. And once this inner clarity begins to emerge, there's only one logical next step: learning how to protect your mind in a world built to manipulate it. This is where we begin to apply the ruthless, strategic thinking of Machiavelli, not to control others, but to safeguard ourselves. Machiavelli never wrote to soothe the masses. He didn't care about being liked, admired, or even understood. His loyalty was to reality, stripped of illusions. He believed that those who fail to see the world as it is, those who prefer comforting lies over hard truths, are destined to be ruled by others. And if that was true in his time, it's even more relevant today. We live in an age where nearly every interaction is engineered to influence you, where algorithms study your behavior more closely than your closest friends, where headlines manipulate emotions, where likes and comments are traded for identity, where your need for connection, approval, even truth, is being used to shape your decisions without your awareness. Machiavelli saw humans not as idealized beings, but as creatures ruled by emotion, self-interest, and perception. He observed something simple but devastatingly accurate. Most people don't seek truth, they seek the appearance of truth. Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, he wrote. In other words, it doesn't matter what's real. It matters what people think is real. Whoever controls that perception controls the game. And this is why narrative matters more than fact. Image matters more than character. Those who understand the mechanics of human behavior can steer entire societies, entire relationships, without ever raising their voice. Not by force, but by influence. So, what does that mean for you? It means you must stop moving through life on emotional autopilot. You need to observe your surroundings, not with the naivety of hope, but with the precision of a strategist. Machiavelli didn't believe in fixed moral codes. He believed in situational awareness. Context is everything. Kindness without awareness, that's exploitation. Honesty at the wrong time, that's self-sabotage. Selflessness without limits, that's servitude. If you want to be free, not just physically, but psychologically, you must learn to read the game. And you must learn to play it well. This begins with silence. The manipulator thrives on your emotional exposure. The more you reveal through words, through reactions, through defensiveness, the easier you are to control. Learn to say less. Reveal less. Sit in silence and watch. Pay attention not to what people claim, but to what they repeat, what they do when no one is watching, what they avoid. Study behavior, not speeches. Track patterns, not apologies. And remember, never just react. Always anticipate. The greatest power lies not in overpowering others, but in becoming unshakable yourself. But how exactly do you build that kind of inner strength? How do you develop emotional immunity in a world addicted to reaction? That's what we'll explore in the next chapter. How to master your emotions without becoming cold. How to protect your peace without losing your humanity, and how to become mentally untouchable. Let's go. Silence, as we saw, is not weakness, it's strategy. When you stop reacting on cue, when you interrupt the rhythm of a manipulator, something powerful happens. You break the script, and in that pause, in that unexpected quiet, you gain an upper hand. It's like a chess move no one saw coming. Silence confuses, it unsettles, and above all, it commands respect. But silence is only the beginning. The next critical skill, mastering ambiguity. Niccolo Machiavelli taught that to maintain influence, one must know how to appear virtuous without always being so. In other words, perception matters more than intention. In the modern world, this doesn't mean being fake or deceptive. It means learning to adapt, adjust your tone, shift your presence, read the room, be water, as Bruce Lee once said, formless, yet precise. You don't owe the world your entire truth. Show just enough to direct how you are perceived. The rest, the most valuable part, stays protected, because real power lies in what remains hidden. And here is the core of it all. Take full responsibility for your emotional state. This is the wall manipulators cannot climb. They feed on your reactivity, on your doubt, guilt, fear, and emotional volatility. But when you learn to regulate yourself, to remain calm even under pressure, to respond instead of reacting, you become impenetrable. Machiavelli once wrote, "The prudent man should follow the paths beaten by the great, and imitate those who have been excellent, so that even if he does not reach their level, he may come close." Learn from the minds that mastered this game, not to become a manipulator, but to stop being a pawn. Now that you understand the internal architecture of manipulation, now that you see how others gain control through emotion, perception, and subtle force, the final question arises. What will you do with this knowledge? How do you transform it into something practical, into a form of quiet strength that protects your freedom, preserves your integrity, and rebuilds your mind from within? This is where we enter the final chapter of your awakening, learning how to command your own mind so completely that no one, not friend, not partner, not parent, not politician, can ever use it against you again. Are you truly ready to cut the last invisible strings that still tug at your decisions? Then let's go, because here's the truth. As uncomfortable as it is, if you don't take full control of your mind, someone else already has. And the scariest part, that person doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes it's a loved one. Sometimes it's a memory you never questioned. Sometimes it's society itself, quietly shaping your beliefs since childhood. The manipulation you suffer doesn't just live in the words others say. It exists in the thoughts you've never challenged, in the emotions you treat as gospel truth, in decisions you thought were yours, but were actually born from fear, guilt, or a desperate hunger for acceptance. Freedom doesn't begin with rebellion. It begins with honesty. You are not free until you stop mistaking obedience for kindness, until you realize that being good isn't the same as being true. That sometimes saying no is the most honest act of love you can offer both to others and to yourself. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, some people will resist your transformation. And yes, you may feel the sting of loneliness when you walk away from toxic dynamics that once defined you. But this is the cost of liberation. Discomfort, silence, distance, and ultimately, peace. You will stop being manipulated when you no longer fear being disliked. When your self-respect outweighs your need for validation. When clarity becomes more important than comfort. And one day, you'll look someone in the eye, someone who once had power over you, and you will calmly say, "No more." What you choose to do with this awareness is now in your hands. You can scroll away, return to the cycle, convince yourself it's too hard, or you can begin. Today, train your mind. Observe without reacting. Speak only when necessary. Rebuild your internal compass. Become the kind of person who cannot be blackmailed emotionally, who sees through flattering words, who stands still while others spin in circles. Comment below. When did you first realize you were being manipulated? What was the moment, the click that opened your eyes? Or are you still tangled in a dynamic you don't know how to escape? Say it, write it. Because the act of naming your reality is the first crack in the illusion. And if this video resonated with you, don't stop here. Watch the next one. It's just as important, maybe more. Knowledge is a staircase. Each insight takes you one step further away from the fog and closer to a life that's truly yours. So keep climbing, because the truth doesn't just set you free. It transforms you.